Hi, I'm Amy. This is House of Nash Eats, and today we are making chocolate macarons. So the first thing to do when you're making macarons, and this is true whether you're making chocolate macarons or pistachio or any other flavor of macarons pretty much, is you're going to combine some almond flour, some powdered sugar, and for chocolate macarons, some cocoa powder. And we're going to sift them together a couple of times using a fine mesh sieve strainer. I really should learn this word, to help combine the ingredients and also to get rid of any extra large chunks that would make the tops of our macaron shells look chunky instead of smooth. Now, this is 1 cup of almond flour and 3/4 of a cup of powdered sugar and 2 tablespoons of dark cocoa powder. You could use regular unsweetened cocoa powder, but the dark cocoa, the Dutch processed darker cocoa powder makes them just darker and more chocolatey shells. So lots of macaron recipes are given in measurements by weight instead of by using cups. And if you have a kitchen scale, that's great. And I'll link to the recipe below where I include measurements by weight in grams. But honestly, I didn't have a scale for a long time and I just got used to using regular cups, and I feel like it's a lot less intimidating to be able to make macarons without worrying about measuring your ingredients and having it be that specific. And they still turn out great, like almost every time. And even if they don't, failed macaron shells are still pretty darn tasty and we eat them anyway. So it takes a little time and a little patience to get this almond flour to go through your fine mesh sieve, but once you do, it really helps everything combine really well and gets rid of any big chunks of almond that might be left. So you could also tap it like this, but it takes forever to do that. So I just find it's a lot easier using the back of a spoon and scraping the almond meal and powdered sugar against the strainer to push it through. Okay, so once you get that through the first time, we're just going to strain it again. So I'm gonna dump it over some parchment paper that we're later going to bake. Whoops. And that way I can get all of this back in. Okay, and we're just gonna repeat that process one more time. And by the time we're done, it will be pretty well, the cocoa powder and the powdered sugar will be pretty well mixed together with that almond flour. So at first, some people are intimidated to make macarons at home, but buying them in a store, they can be really expensive for like one little macaron. I mean, they're delicious. We went to La Durée in Paris. I'm sure I just butchered the pronunciation of that, but they're famous for their macarons, and we got so many flavors and we ate them all while walking around the streets of Paris, and it was just such a fantastic experience with our kids. So they love macarons, and we just make them at home now, and we can make as many as we want for a lot less than if we buy them somewhere. So another really great thing about macarons is that they're naturally gluten-free, so a lot of people who have gluten intolerance can enjoy this dessert. That's good. Okay. So depending on the quality of your almond flour, you might just have a little bit left, and you can just toss that so you don't have bumpy shells. Okay, we're gonna set this to the side and we're going to work on the meringue part of our macarons next. And I've got 3 large egg whites that I actually cracked and separated yesterday, and I left them in my fridge uncovered overnight. And then I just pulled them out and let them sit on the counter for like an hour. It's called aging the egg whites, and you don't have to do it, but I feel like it helps and I get more consistent results when I do it. It's up to you, but I usually age these overnight in the fridge. So I'm gonna put these in my mixer, and we're just going to use the whisk attachment and whisk these for about a minute until they start getting frothy. Okay, and you can see once they start to get foamy and frothy, then it's time to start adding the granulated sugar. So it's 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, and we're just going to add it about a tablespoon or 2 at a time and let it mix for about 10 to 20 seconds between each addition. So it's a slow process of adding the sugar. It's going to beat until it comes to stiff peaks. Okay, so we're gonna check and see if we're at stiff peaks yet. or if it falls over on itself. So if you take the whisk off and you pull it up, you can see that it's falling over, and that bend means we're still at soft peaks and we're not quite where we want to be. So we're gonna keep whisking a little bit longer. Okay, you can see that this has a nice tall peak shape, and that is just about right for our macarons. If you go too far, you could break your meringue, but it takes a while to get there. So make sure you get nice stiff peaks, and then you can start the process of doing the macaronage. Okay, this is my favorite part, and it has a name. It's called macaronage. I'm sure I am butchering that pronunciation as well. But this is the process of mixing the dry ingredients with the meringue until it gets just the right consistency to pipe out your macaron shells. Now, when I first started making macarons, I was really intimidated by this process. I was told if you do it too little, they won't turn out. If you do it too much, they won't turn out. And that's kind of true, but there's a lot more leeway than you might think. When you first start, you might want to count 50 to 60 strokes as you stir it in and fold it in, and that might help you, but I'll talk to you in a second about the consistency we're really looking for. So I'm going to dump this all in right now, and then using a large sturdy spatula, we're just going to pull it through the mixture and flip it over. And at first, it's going to take a little bit to come together. So it's just kind of almost like a J shape, like you pull the spatula towards yourself and just dump the mixture on top of itself. And scoop around and make sure you get everything from the bottom and get the sides of the bowl. And as you keep doing this, with each of these strokes, you're taking some of the air out of your meringue. And you'll start to see the ingredients combine together. Really make sure you're scraping the bottom of that bowl. And I like to scrape off my spatula a couple of times as well so that it all gets evenly mixed together. And these chocolate macarons, the batter smells like brownies. It smells so good. So what we're going for is we're going for a consistency where the batter is falling off in ribbons. So if you pull it up and it just kind of clumps off like that, it's not ready yet. So we're going to keep going. And the test to see if it's ready is to just keep scooping up the batter, letting it drop off. And when it clumps off like that, you've got to keep stirring and doing more of this J-shaped motion. And it's a bit of an arm workout, but you'll start to notice that you get this nice consistency where it will come off as a ribbon. And after about 10 to 20 seconds, the edges will sort of melt in on themselves. And you can see it kind of flows off like a ribbon here. Another test that you can do is to take a spoon or spatula full of the batter and try to make a figure 8 shape. If you can make a figure 8 shape in your bowl without it breaking and do that 2 times, it's ready. That's my favorite test. So you just lift up the spatula and then let the ribbon fall off and start making figure 8s. And if you can do it 2 times and it holds the figure 8 shape down in the bowl, you know you're ready to make your macarons. So now I'm gonna transfer this to a piping bag and we're gonna pipe out our macaron shells. Okay, so I've got a large disposable piping bag and a large round tip. And you could just use a large Ziploc bag too and cut off the end and it would still work for your macarons, which is definitely what I did the first few times. But a tip really helps. So place it in a tall cup and fold the sides over. And then fill it up with your macaron batter. Okay, now we're going to pipe out circles that are about 1 inch to an inch and a half in diameter. And some people will even go so far as to trace circles all over their parchment paper to get perfectly shaped macarons. I'm just gonna freehand it. Okay, so I go perpendicular and I just give a little squeeze and lift off, just like that. And don't worry just yet if there are little peaks at the top, because if you did your macaronage right, those will settle in on themselves in just a minute. Now, once you've piped all of your macaron shells, you're going to pick up your baking sheet and wrap it really hard on the counter a couple of times. And that's going to help smooth these out and get rid of any air bubbles so you don't end up with cracked or hollow shells in the middle. You can already start to see some of the bubbles popping on the top as they've come out of the macaron shells. So now we're just going to let these sit at room temperature for about 30 to 60 minutes. And this can kind of depend on the weather, the humidity, but generally you're looking to let these dry out just a little bit on the top to form a skin before we bake them in the oven. And that's what's going to help them rise and get those ruffly edges around the bottom that are called feet, that are kind of the hallmark of properly made macarons. Okay, I've got my oven preheated to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and my macarons have been sitting out for about 30 minutes. They are just slightly tacky to the touch, so they don't stick too bad to my fingers. And I'm going to pop them in the oven for about 16 to 18 minutes. Okay, while our macarons are in the oven, I'm going to make a super simple chocolate ganache filling. So all there is to ganache is just 2/3 of a cup of semi-sweet chocolate. I just use chocolate chips, and 1/3 of a cup of heavy cream. And I'm going to combine those together and then microwave them for 30 seconds and stir it up, and it should be all the way melted. And if not, I'll just pop them back in for another 15 to 20 seconds and stir until they're all the way melted to make our ganache. Okay, now we've got the cream and chocolate chips out of the microwave, and we're just going to stir them together. And you can see that that chocolate is already melted. And at first, it won't look like it's going to come together, but after just 30 seconds of stirring or so, this is going to combine to a really thick, luxurious ganache that will make an excellent filling for our macarons. You could also use like a chocolate buttercream or Nutella as a filling, but I really, really love the like strong hit of dark chocolate from a ganache like this. People think ganache is like so fancy because it sounds really fancy, but it's super simple to make. It's just chocolate and heavy cream. Okay, and there we go. We've got a nice, beautiful dark chocolate ganache, and we're gonna pop that in the fridge so it can cool down so that we can then pipe it onto our macaron shells. Okay, so my macaron shells have baked, and then I've let them cool for probably 45 minutes now. You really want them to cool all the way. If you immediately try to pick the macaron shells off of your parchment paper, they could stick. And definitely use parchment paper so that they don't stick as much. But once they're done, they should have nice little feet around the bottom, these ruffly edges. And we're just going to turn half of them over and match them up. Okay, and so I've got my ganache filling, and it has thickened up nicely in the fridge so I can actually pipe it without it running everywhere. So I'm just going to turn over my macaron shells and pipe out some of my ganache. And then we're just going to place another shell on top that's about the same size and sandwich those together. And it's really best to let these sit for a couple of hours, even overnight. Macarons do great the next day, or you can just eat them right away. And that's it. We've got our chocolate macarons, and they are so yummy looking and they smell really delicious, and I'm going to taste one. Okay, I've got this one right here. These are amazing. I swear these are just like the ones that I've enjoyed all over France. They're so chewy. The chocolate is really intense from that chocolate ganache, and the outside of the shell is just nice and crisp. It's a wonderful macaron. They're easier than you think. Don't be intimidated by these. You really should give these a try at home. I hope you liked this video and that you give these chocolate macarons a try in your own house. And be sure to let me know in the comments below what your favorite macaron flavor is, because maybe I'll post it on here next. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more great recipes like this. I don't know if you, do you say the N or the S?
Macaron.
Macaron?
Yeah.
Okay, macaron. I can't say macaron. Stop laughing at me. Okay.